Who's been perfecting small batch sausage for over 30 years? Uncle Charlie's. Whose delicious grillers are always fresh, never frozen? Uncle Charlie's. Who only uses 80% lean pork for superior taste and premium quality, whether you grill it, smoke it, or fry it? Uncle Charlie's. Okay, which sausage do Pittsburgh grill masters count on to impress friends and family? Yep, Uncle Charlie's. Available at your local grocer. Uncle Charlie's. Small batch, huge taste.
Enjoy basketball, soccer, and all your favorite sports like never before at BetMGM. Sign up using bonus code LIBERTY and your first wager is risk-free up to $1,000. Plus, when you register with BetMGM, you'll get instant access to a variety of parlay selection features, live betting options, player props, and daily boosted odds specials. Download the BetMGM app today or go to BetMGM.com and enter bonus code LIBERTY and place your first wager risk-free up to $1,000. Now you're winning with the king of sportsbooks. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. Pennsylvania only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, help is available. Call 1-800-GAMBLER in partnership with Hollywood Casino Morgantown.
Hey, it's Christine from Storyworthy. Today on the show, comedian Tamer Kattan talks about a cat attack.
The chaos that our cat was feeling, we couldn't perceive. And then Anna just was so scared that he was going to get away that she just ran and grabbed him, and he was not having it, and he just started biting. He bit her in the nose and bit straight through her nostril. Blood was gushing out of her face. Her finger was the worst. Her finger was just, he must have bitten her finger like 4 or 5 times, like deep bites. Blood was just gushing because he bit her in the nose, you know?
Today on the show, comedian Tamer Kattan talks about a cat attack. Stay close.
Hey, it's Tamer Kattan, and you're listening to Storyworthy.
Welcome to Storyworthy. My name is Blackburn, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Whether you're a longtime fan of the show of over 11 and a half years now, or you're a new listener, welcome to Storyworthy. And Happy New Year. Again, of course. I mean, yes, last week we were on, but I think it's still early enough to say Happy New Year, don't you, Tamer?
100%. I think Larry David would approve.
Yeah, it's not too late.
Right.
I think the cutoff, I'm going to say the cutoff is Martin Luther King Day. There.
I think that's fair.
I threw that out. Yeah, 2022. Anyway, I'm so happy you guys are here, and I hope that you had a chance to listen to the episode last week with comedian Nick Vatterott. Nick told a really funny story about... Hang on, I'm going to tell you what it was about.
I listened to it, actually. It was really good.
Yeah. He was talking about... Tell me what he was talking about again, Tamer.
He was in Turkey. And at the time he performed comedy in Turkey.
Yes, he was trying to get stage time in Istanbul.
Yeah.
And it was just so silly because he doesn't speak any Turkish. And so, I mean, like, for instance, Tamer, you go all over the world and perform. You know, you've done stand-up in so many interesting places. You've got gigs coming up now in Austria and in Ireland. And so you're always moving around and about. But have you done stand-up in another language?
You know what's funny is I grew up in a house that was filled with lots of different languages. My grandmother was an actress, and she was the patriarch of the family. So she was sort of like the godmother, and she had this rule where we spoke only French in the morning, and then Greek in the afternoon, and then Italian, and then Arabic. We lived in Cairo, but I never did comedy in another language until this year. And now this is going to be my third language that I'm going to be doing comedy in now.
Holy cow. Wait, so what have you done? What languages have you done stand-up in?
Swedish, and this Monday night, I'll be performing in Portuguese for the first time.
Tamer, this is unbelievable. I mean, truly. Now, I'm just meeting you for the first time, and I know that you are from Cairo, Egypt, and I've had on a few other Egyptian comedians. I've had on Bassem Youssef. Do you know Bassem?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's been on the show. And then I had on a guy named Bill Dawes. He's American, but he does he tells an incredible story about being in Cairo and being detained by the police, and So I know a little bit about Egypt, but I had no idea that you can, not that you can, but that people do grow up in households with multiple languages in Egypt. In other words, I thought that it would only typical. Be. Yeah, it's not typical, right?
No, Yeah, I mean, it's funny because in the Middle East, because of education and influence, like the year when I was born in Egypt, we had a black president who had a white British wife. And so the belief or perception that things of a British were luxury and higher status was elevated even more when Anwar Sadat married a white woman from England. And I think it's the same thing. In upper class homes in Egypt, people speak French or English, sometimes both. Yeah.
Well, where did you learn Swedish?
Well, it's funny. I met a Swedish au pair when I was a kid, and not a kid, like I was like 23, and we hit it off. We had this great relationship, and then she had to move back to Sweden. And even though my brain understood a visa, my heart didn't. I was like, here's this girl that I've met and is wonderful, and we get along. We have such a great time together. And suddenly she's leaving, and I just didn't understand. So I quit my job. I sold my truck, and I moved to Sweden. And,
no, you didn't.
Totally illegally. The only thing I knew in Swedish was numbers. So I ended up selling bread in the subway because I knew how to make change. Yeah, it was very bizarre. And it was a crazy situation.
Was that the first time you left Cairo? No.
No. We moved to America when I was like 6 years old. So
that's right.
I'm like the other end of the spectrum on the type of Egyptian than a Bassem Youssef, for example, where he spent the majority of his life in Egypt. I spent the majority of my life in Los Angeles and New York. So,
but when you're telling me you followed this Swedish girl, where were you leaving from? LA?
Oh, I was in California.
You were in California, and then you just go to Sweden.
Yeah.
And then what?
I went to Sweden, and then when I got to Sweden, she was very different in Sweden than she was.
Like how? Tell me. That's really funny.
Well, okay, this is really crazy difference, by the way. So in California, she was this beach bunny. And to the point where she'd show up at my work. I worked at an ad agency. I was a copywriter. And she'd show up to my work in a bikini top and shorts. And she'd be like, hey, I finished surfing. When are you off work? And then all my coworkers that were older guys were like, oh my God, who is that? and where's that accent from? It was literally a Swedish girl in a bikini. Like they'd lost their minds.
That is so funny. And you lost your mind, and that's why you followed her.
Yeah. And then when I got there, she went back to being what she was, which was equally wonderful, but just not as much of a fit. She was a pastor's daughter in Sweden. And she was like going to church every Sunday and leading Sunday school. And to this day, now she runs like a Christian radio show, which is very unusual in Sweden. Like Sweden's a mostly kind of atheist or agnostic country.
Yeah, they're progressive.
Yeah. Very progressive.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they're more educated and they don't get fooled as easily, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be part of it. So anyway, Tamer, you bring forth the topic today, cat attack. And I love cats. I absolutely adore cats. I've always had them in my life. Recently, for who knows why, I've been painting cats. Why?
Oh, wow.
Why am I painting cats? I put a picture up on Facebook or Instagram, but I've recently painted 11 cats, like my friends and my sister's cats. And I don't know. I've always adored cats. So when I hear the topic cat attack, I'm worried because you are talking about a domestic cat, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because I'm thinking all of a sudden it could be Carol Baskin, because she was on my show. Seriously,
I noticed that. I was so intrigued when I saw that.
She's a great lady. She's really impressive, actually. But my point is that, she's talking about big cats. You are talking about a domestic cat.
Yeah, well, actually, that's kind of the conundrum that I'm in. And it's funny because doing what comedians do, while we were in the hospital emergency room, I wrote a tweet, and it was a theory on why women love cats. Because, and the theory is, or why they're obsessed with cats. And here's the tweet, or my theory in tweet form.
Yes.
I said, I think women like cats because it's inspiring to watch something viciously attack people who touch it when it doesn't want to be touched. Right?
We do have that in common. That is very common. Women, don't touch us if we don't want to be touched. It's the same thing with cats. That's great.
I get it. Cats are the same way. What a great model to follow.
That's so funny.
And listen, I'm Egyptian. I have like adoring cats is in my DNA. Yeah. I'm supposed to love cats.
Right,
you know?
right. Okay, so I have been, of course, looking into you because I knew you were coming on my show. And I listened to a couple of your episodes of your podcast, They Tried to Bury Us.
Yeah.
And this is a very unique idea. Each week, an immigrant of the United States shares their American origin story. Like, it's so simple. It's such a simple idea, but I have never seen anybody do it.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice of you to say. I actually, believe it or not, I got the idea from Ronald Reagan. Like, you know, before Ronald Reagan, the way politicians used to argue is about the economics or about why you should elect them, they put up a bunch of infographics on what the economy is doing, especially when they got into finances. It turned into like financial gibberish, you know. And Ronald Reagan, because he was an actor and therefore a storyteller, he said something that was really powerful. He said, ask yourselves, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Mm-hmm. So he didn't need the infographics. He didn't need the charts. He didn't tell people to think with their rational brain. He told them to think with their emotions. Mm-hmm. How do you feel? Mm-hmm. And I think that's this. He said, are you better off than you were? You know, that kind of a thing.
What does that have to do with They Tried to Bury Us?
Sure. So when They Tried to Bury Us, I felt like there was a lot of negative talk about immigrants, and the word was starting to become demonized. And I feel like that happens a lot if the majority of the stories are negative about a topic, regardless of the truth, the perception becomes negative.
Yeah.
And I knew that just by being a lifelong immigrant. So I said, I don't need to argue these points. I don't need to prove them wrong. I just need to create balance and just show that there are plenty of good people who come to this country, and have faith that the type of people, the type of stories that are going to come out are going to show the other side of immigration, which is actually minimized, that these are very brave people.
Absolutely.
And, you know, these are people that are fueled by love.
These are people that they carry the babies on their backs across the desert. I mean.
Yeah. And sometimes just on a plane. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
really.
Because the perception is always just, it's so, I don't know. It's funny. Like, the perception is just so far from the reality. It's always going to happen this way in storytelling. The most dramatic stories are what's going to come out. And usually that's great, unless you're the real person, which I'm sure Carol Baskin can relate to. Yeah. Sometimes the most dramatic story hurts the characters of the real story.
Wow.
And I thought that's what was happening. So They Tried to Bury Us. I did not think the stories were going to be as dramatic as they were. I thought it was just going to be people just talking about how much they love America. And that's why I always made a point of every episode was in 3 parts. And I always made sure that the last part was always a positive, like, what's been great about America and why are you happy that you're here? And it, you know, that kind of, whenever I traveled, it always made me love America more, not less. Yeah. And I felt like for so many people that don't travel, maybe as much as they should, maybe if they didn't travel, what if I brought the traveling to them? And maybe that would help.
And how did you decide to have your mom as your co-host?
Well, you know, the one thing I've learned from being a big fan of podcasts and being a big fan of radio as a medium is that voices are like adding color and paint on a picture, you know, and some people have interesting voices. And I think my mom having an accent added to the immigrant experience. And I think I've noticed this, you know, I had this joke where somebody said, go back to where you came from. And I'm like, I did. They hated me. Right. And it's because I'm so American now. My accent is so American that there's people that doubt that I'm an immigrant. So I thought, you know, bring my mom on added credibility.
It sure does. Now, her name, you call her Kitty. I mean, that's what's on the title of the podcast. But what is her real name?
Maggie or Megda.
Yeah, because when she says her name in the podcast, it doesn't sound like Kitty.
Yeah.
She says her name. Can you make the accent that she does?
Kitty?
Well, she says, though, when you say it, I'm here with my mom, and she says her name, and it's just
Kitty,
sounds...
she says Tamer Kattan.
Yeah, but her accent is thick. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it is. It's a thick accent, and it's a muddled accent.
Yeah.
Because we grew up in this very bizarre house. My grandmother was an actress, so she had all these friends that came over. Like, we had almost like 4 different parties a day. Like,
Unbelievable.
It was
what
bizarre.
Was this idea of talking different languages at different times of the day? What was that?
So the island my grandmother is from is Crete, which is closer to Egypt than it is to Athens. So, and there's a town where we lived called Alexandria, and the reason why it's called that is because it's where Alexander the Great lived with Cleopatra. It was the merging of 2 worlds. It was Italy and Egypt, merging together. And I think to this day, it's been that way. And so Egypt, when it first gave visas to Greek people, the first place they gave those visas was allowing Greeks to live in Alexandria and open up restaurant businesses.
Interesting.
Stuff. So my grandmother grew up there. Her parents were 100% Greek, but she married an Egyptian man, had my dad. They were mixed between Christian and Muslim. And then my mom's family was mixed between Christian and Jewish. And then they got married, and now we're Muslim, Jews, Christians in one family.
That is so interesting. I mean, it really is vastly worlds apart and then all together. And just the idea that your grandmother was an actress, it seems like that's very progressive for Egypt, isn't it?
She had a boob job in the 60s.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
That never happened.
She told my grandfather, I'm going to have a boob job. And then my grandfather forgot that he wasn't married to an Egyptian woman and said, I forbid you. And she goes, oh, do you? And he goes, yeah, I forbid you. She goes, okay, have a good day. And he goes to work, and he came home to an empty house.
Wow.
And he's like, oh, my God, where's Stella? Where's Stella? And then they all said, she's at the hospital. And he's like, what? And he came out. She was in a hospital bed, post-surgery, smoking a cigarette. She's like, hello, Ahmed.
That is wonderful. What a funny story.
She's a badass.
Yeah, no kidding.
She was a badass.
And then you also, you also have this show called Reformed Toxic Man. Now, can you explain that? Because the idea there, is it about your father?
It's about both of us in a way. Like, I used to say this thing on stage sometimes, and sometimes we say things that it's not the laugh that gets the audience to come up to you after. And what I said was, I talk about being a physically abused kid. And, I say, listen, I'm not mad at my dad anymore. I want you to know that I go to therapy, and I understand that my dad was abused too. And so he was also a victim. And the guy that abused my dad was like a vampire, and he bit my dad. And then as hard as he tried not to, my dad turned into a vampire, and then he bit me.
For
and now
real?
I have to, it's a metaphor.
Okay, sorry.
But now I go to therapy so I could be like one of the vampires on Twilight, right? And it's like, my dad was an abused person. My dad was abused by a man who turned my dad into an abusive man. And so I had to learn if I wanted to be a good person, thank God for my mom being a saint in my life, that I learned how to be a better man and kind of break that cycle. And it took a very long time. I didn't get married till I was 50.
Was your grandmother, the grandmother that lived with you, was that your dad's mom?
Yeah.
But why couldn't she keep him in line? I mean, what was that?
Well, she was a single mom in Egypt, and now when her husband died, running 4 restaurant businesses, and she had 2 sons, and my dad was the young one in the middle of his teens, and she couldn't handle him, so she sent him to a boarding school. Mm-hmm. But little did she know that the boarding school in Cairo was going to be abusive to him. And then my dad went through, in Egypt, it's a very macho culture.
I know.
And I think, and it's problematic, because my dad, my mom used to go up to my dad and say, hey, why are you so mean to your son? Like, why don't you love him? And he goes, hey, don't say that to me. I love my son. But my dad died when I was 13 years old, and it broke my heart. And I don't want Tamer to ever feel that pain, so I don't want him to get too close to me.
Oof.
That's really messed up thinking.
That's sad.
But
yeah.
It's really sad, and it's heartbreaking. And I'll tell you, to this day, when I see a father and son playing catch together, playing golf together, it hurts. You know what I mean? Because I feel like my dad never really got to know who I was. Like he didn't know anything about me. And it was, but when he got cancer, the silver lining was he softened. And age softened him. And when his testosterone dropped, it softened him. Right. That's why I'm against Viagra, by the way. I'm against Viagra. I'm against testosterone treatment because I think it's a good thing for your testosterone to drop. I think it's supposed to.
Normal,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, like at 50, you're supposed to be able to say, that's a beautiful sunset. With that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a nice thing. But
Did your dad ever apologize to you?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a part of the culture.
But you moved over here so early.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It was. I used to say this in my comedy a lot that like it's weird when you immigrate because you and your parents immigrate at different rates. So I became
so interesting.
Right, like I became fully American, and my dad was still Egyptian. Like I used to come home with American problems, and he'd give me Arab solutions.
Wow.
And I'm all, this isn't working.
Wow.
So it was like that. It was like I was American, but I was coming home to the Egyptian embassy. As soon as the door opened, I was going into another country.
Why was he? Well, I mean, I don't mean to say how would he abuse you, but what would set him off?
Well, he was he had anger issues, and to be honest, I don't think every person is meant to be a parent, and I don't think my dad was supposed to be a dad.
Interesting.
But I don't think he's a bad guy in any way. I think he showed my mom a tremendous amount of love. And I think, I'll be honest, I think that he wanted to be an artist.
Yeah.
And I think when he got married, he thought he could still be an artist. But then when he had a kid, I think I symbolized the death of a dream for him.
Yeah, my dad, the same thing. My dad wanted to be Johnny Carson, but he was 33 and had 6 kids. So you can't do that,
Yeah.
So then he became an accountant, and it pissed him off.
My dad was an accountant, and it pissed him off.
That's awesome. When my dad retired at 62, he became an actor, which is what he always wanted to do. Yeah. And then he lived another 20 years, and he was just, even though it was just like community plays or local theater, whatever, he was so happy. That's always what he wanted to do, It's
the most important thing in the world.
Yeah. So that's too bad your dad didn't get to that side.
Yeah. I mean, he did. He definitely found his heart in the end, and he's very kind in the end. And I say this all the time. Like, I feel like my relationship improves with my dad as my relationship improves with myself.
Yeah,
that's neat. The
more
healthier I become, 100%. Yeah. Like, I don't hate him anymore. I don't have anger towards him anymore. As a matter of fact, I feel like I'm the adult now and he's the kid. When I think of him as the victim and me as the strong person helping him.
Well, it's probably very accurate. And so that was a play that you did, Reform Toxic Man?
No, it was a one-man. It was my
solo
stand-up,
show.
an hour of my stand-up, but it was an hour that was more focused on the new definition of masculinity and the new definition for me and maybe the new definition for society.
Did you make that into an album? Was that a comedy album?
No, I have an album.
I know, Brown Sheep. I know that
Brown
one.
Sheep, yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, on your here's the thing. On your Twitter banner, I see the Reform Toxic Man, and it just looks very enticing. It really is enticing. But what it doesn't say is a 1-hour comedy special by. So what I mean, I don't know what it is. So
I think it's the Twitter banner is so thin that I had to cut off the bottom of the poster.
Isn't that funny how we learn? That's funny how we learn from each other. So you do have
that's great.
Yeah, you do have the comedy album Brown Sheep, and that, of course, is a play on words. What your skin color, and that you were always the outsider.
Exactly. Yeah, I was an outsider, but not an outsider amongst white people, an outsider amongst even
Egyptians.
The sheeps I come from as well. I wasn't American, I wasn't Egyptian. I was this weird thing in the middle that now I've found out is an equally has the same integrity as being American or Egyptian. I'm a hybrid.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing. It's like the way bisexual people feel now.
Yeah,
that's my sexuality. Go with yourself. I am what I am. Yeah,
well,
I like
think
it too.
It's super interesting, and I'm just very I'm excited to meet you. So let's get over to your story Christine. In just a second here. But before we do, I wanted to remind everybody that Story Smash, the storytelling game show, is back live at the Hollywood Improv Saturday, January 22nd. Danny Zucker's going to be there, Blanca Patch, Melissa Peterman. By the way, that's my dream team, and they're all going to be there. So come on down to the Hollywood Improv on January 22nd. We're playing Story Smash. Come on down, laugh your butt off. The show starts at 7 o'clock. It's kind of early this time, a little bit early, 7 o'clock. Check out storysmashshow.com for more information. And, of course, you can find me over there on you can find Story Smash on Instagram, because that's where I post the pictures, the show pictures. You know what I'm saying? So at Story Smash, find me there. Would you do that? Yes? Yes.
Yes.
All right, you guys, he's here right now. You've heard him talking, Tamer Kattan. He is an Egyptian man. That's interesting. But you are a comedian and a writer and an actor. And you do tour all over the world. And I'm always so impressed by people that do this. You know, I just had on Avi Lieberman a couple of weeks ago. Same thing. Yeah, he's always even Israel or Russia, and he's just, and you're the same way. You get around. It's very impressive. And you do have the podcast, like we said. They tried to bury us. Check that out, you guys. And you have also performed at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. You performed for the troops in Afghanistan. And you've just done so much stuff. You've got a wonderful... the entire presence, your whole package. You're a package. That's what you are.
Thank you. That's
so
nice.
You are a package. You guys can find more out about Tamer over at his website, tamerkattan.com, and also follow him on Twitter at Tamer Kattan. All right, you guys, whoever you are, put your hands together for the very talented Tamer Kattan.
Yay. Thanks, Christine. That's such a lovely introduction. Thank you. So it's fun. I've loved cats my whole life. My wife is the epitome of a cat mom. It was I almost felt, after we got married, I almost felt like I was the third wheel, right? Like I say this a lot, like moving in with a woman and her cat is like moving in with a feminist and her gay best friend. Like I was absolutely the outsider, but we wanted to spend a weekend together, because I was going to go I'm going back on the road pretty soon. And so we said, let's go to the Portuguese countryside. We've been living in Portugal now for 6 months, but we hadn't explored the countryside yet. And she found this commune-like place. And it said pet friendly on the thing. So we took a car 30 minutes into the Portuguese countryside. And the countryside there is pretty wild. So we're driving down these long dirt roads to get to this place. It's the middle of the night. And the cat carrier was really small, almost so small that Anna didn't want the cat to be uncomfortable. So she said, I'm going to hold him just on the leash and I'll carry him.
On her lap, like in the car.
Yeah. But then when we got out of the car, she kept carrying him just on her chest instead of putting him back in the carrier. And then we got to the cat. The cat was anxious, but not so bad. I mean, it was a long car ride. But then we get to it looks like a little white church inside this countryside. And we start walking in, and I had this gut feeling like, hey, this is the woods. And I'm holding an animal to my chest. Oh. And I've heard stories about like coyotes attacking people because the animal is exposed as opposed to being in the box. And there was nobody there. So we called a number saying, hey, if you want to check in, call this number. And the woman said she'd be there in 15 minutes. So now we're standing outside in the woods, and suddenly a bunch of cats start walking towards us.
Oh, no.
But the other cats were super calm, but they all looked really rough. Like one had a really bad limp. The other was a hair lip. The other one it looked like it had an open wound.
Oh, God.
And our cat, it was as if he turned into a werewolf. It just started screaming and jumped out of her arms and just ran into the bushes.
Oh, God.
So my wife started to panic. I started to panic. The other cat, we tried to keep the other cats away. So she was trying to feed them with like cat snacks, but they'd keep getting bored of the snacks and then running towards him. And they'd run towards him. He was just screaming. Because it's almost like cats use scent and we can't smell what they smell. So it's as if you took a dog to a place where someone was just blowing dog whistles. Like, the chaos that our cat was feeling, we couldn't perceive. And then Anna was so scared that he was going to get away that she just ran and grabbed him, and he was not having it, and he just started biting.
Your wife?
Biting my wife.
Oh, God.
we have plastic tips on his claws because we don't like decline, but we put these plastic tips so we wouldn't rip up the furniture. Thank God we have those plastic clips on his paws, but he attacked her really close to her eye. He bit her in the nose and bit straight through her nostril.
Oh my God.
Blood was gushing out of her face.
God.
Her finger was the worst. Her finger was just, he must have bitten her finger like 4 or 5 times, like deep bites.
Oh my God.
And then like we walked into the house. It was an empty house. We saw an open bedroom. We walked in there and it's just blood was just gushing because he bit her in the nose. You know?
God.
So we get him in the room and he's just hissing at us and in a way we don't even recognize him. We've never seen him act like that ever. And so we get in the house, we close the door. She goes to the bathroom to start washing her wounds. I know one thing about cats, which is their bites are they're filled with bacteria.
Yeah.
But because they're thin but deep, the bites. So you got to wash it really, really quickly because the danger is if the skin closes up on the top, the bacteria will build inside your skin. So she cleaned it really well, thank goodness. And then we used the woman who came, we told her what happened. So she brought iodine and cleaner. But she's like, I don't even want to be here. And I go, me either. And I go, but what are we going to do with the cat? And the cat was there was no way we were going to get him in that tiny carrier. So thankfully we made a new friend. It was also a Swedish woman. It was only 20 minutes away in this area called Sintra. And they had dogs. So they had this big carrier. So she came down and she brought it and brought the car and she was like Batwoman, you know, she just saved us.
Yeah, I mean, you called her out of the blue, right? You just call her out of the blue. You know,
called her out of the blue.
Can you
We'd
help
only
us?
hung out with her one time before.
That's so strange.
My wife met her in a meetup group because it's almost like we're immigrants again, you know, like we're in this country where we don't know a lot of people. And that's why I feel extra guilty when I'm on the road because we're not in Barcelona where she knew friends for 8 years. We're in Portugal where both of us are brand new. Mm-hmm. So when I'm gone, it's pretty lonely for her.
Does she speak Portuguese as well?
No, but she speaks Spanish fluently. She speaks 5 languages, but now she's learning Portuguese. If you know Spanish, it's pretty good.
I've heard that.
But she's Swedish, and I think she's a little bit less outgoing than maybe a comic from New York or LA.
Wait, your wife is Swedish?
Yeah.
So you ended up with a Swedish woman after that?
Ended up with a Swedish woman.
Oh, God, Tamer. That's hilarious.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's
funny.
funny.
You know what's funny? It's definitely not a kink or anything because I've only been with 3 Swedish women in my entire life. But it was just like...
But still, I mean, that's like saying I've only been with 3 Egyptian men. I mean, what? That's a lot.
No, but I mean, for a guy who got married at 49, it's not like I only dated Swedish women or I went out of my way to meet Swedish women. We actually met during the pandemic and we fell in love over Bumble.
Oh,
we just talked like 6 hours a day, every day for 3 months. And then I already had COVID and recovered from it. So I flew to Barcelona because back then the law said I could come in. And then when I got there, they said, oh, we changed the law yesterday. And I'm like, what? I was in the air yesterday. And they're like, no, you can't come in. And they put me in jail and made me spend the night in jail. And then the next day sent me back to the States.
You're kidding me. So you flew all the way to Barcelona and they wouldn't let you stay and you had to fly back?
Yeah.
Your
and the deal
girlfriend
was,
must have been so upset. Was she?
Oh my God, yeah. We were both really upset. And the plan was we were going to spend the summer together to get to know each other because we'd spoken 6 hours a day, every day for like a couple months. And, which is not a long time. I've never really had anything like this happen. And then a week later, because my dad was in a Beatles cover band, talk about full circle, I knew about a tiny country called Gibraltar, which is where John Lennon married Yoko Ono. And I asked her to marry me the day that we met in Gibraltar. And then we got married in the exact same spot as John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
Oh my gosh, that is so sweet.
It was cool. It was almost as if my dad was there, like the good version of my dad was there. Yeah, it was weird.
Wow. Okay, wait, get back to the cat.
So here's the cat. So then thank God for this woman, Molly, who's another Swedish person and like a professional roller skater. And she's setting up a roller skating camp in the woods in Portugal. Portugal's so cool. Like there's these super cool entrepreneurs.
That
like
is so cool. That sounds like a progressive person. Wow.
Yeah. Like it's a skate park where you could come skateboard or roller skate and then you can also sleep there and then skate the next day. Like it's going to be dope, this thing that they're building.
Okay.
But thankfully for us, She showed up in a wagon with this dog carrier, but the dog carrier, I was worried that the cat would be able to stick its head through. Because our cat's an Egyptian Mao, so its head is really small and its body's long. And I was like, shit. So we covered it with blankets. They left the room. It was just me, myself, and the cat. The cat was under the bed. And then I tricked him into the box. And I used like this app for cats. It's like an app game for cats where they click on, it's like
fish
a fish
or whatever. Yeah,
you on the screen. Yeah. So I tricked him into the box, and I closed the box on him and stuck the pin in. But even while we were putting him in the box, there was like 5 cats in the house, and they were still spraying. They were like spraying walls and stuff. And I'm like, this is a wild, that's not pet friendly.
That's at all.
It's the opposite of pet friendly.
Right.
Yeah. And then the whole drive back, he was hissing and screaming. It was insane, and until we got back to Lisbon, which is about a 40-minute drive, we get back to Lisbon, and all of a sudden you hear this little meow.
Oh.
And it was as if the Incredible Hulk turned back into David Banner.
You're kidding.
It's so, oh my God, it was really like a werewolf that became a man again. It was just like a naked guy sitting in a pair of cut-off jeans, like ripped up jeans. And he's like, what have I done, And we got him back in the apartment, and once he got in the apartment, he just became himself again. Wow. And today we had our first emergency room visit in Portugal. We hadn't had that experience yet, and our paperwork isn't completely finalized, so we still don't have all the documents for residency. So we went in there basically with no health insurance, and they took such good care of us. And during COVID, we were sitting, waiting in the emergency room, saw a doctor, was given 4 different medications, and well taken care of, left the hospital, got our pills, got back. All of that happened in 2 hours.
Wow.
And it cost $26.
So, wow, that's amazing. So Did the doctor say anything that the cat, had the cat had like its distemper shots and all those initial shots that kitties get?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
That's good, right?
Yeah, and I think we also made a point of explaining why this happened, because I think if like a cat just randomly attacks someone, I think the government wants to know, because I think there's sort of like just like humans have a 3 strikes.
Yeah, or it could be rabid or something.
Yeah, exactly. But no, our cat even has a Spanish passport. Like, it's really cute. Like, he had to get all of his shots, and he had to take a picture, and he's got this little passport from Spain. That's so he
adorable.
can travel.
So where is your wife from? She's from Sweden, but didn't she chose to live in Portugal?
Yeah, so she's from the south of Sweden, in a town called Malmo, which is really close to Denmark. So that's why and close to Norway. So she spoke Norwegian, Swedish, Danish, German, and then she had been living when we started speaking, she'd already been living in Barcelona for 8 years.
Oh, wow. So she must love Barcelona.
Yeah, she did, until I moved there. And then when I moved there, I was like, hey, let's go see the La Sagrada Familia, And she's like, oh, that's touristy. I'm like, well, let's go see this. She's like, that's not that fun.
That one's the big church where you kind of have to lay on your back to see the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it was just, she was someone who'd lived there for a long time, and I was there. It was brand new. So, and I was like, hey, I'm starting to get frustrated. We need to live somewhere where you're not bored of it, and I'm not able to get excited by it. So during quarantine, of course, we fantasized about traveling, and we fantasized about living abroad. And so we were doing a bunch of research about great places to live. And my perception of comedy in Europe is that I was going to have to be on the road. I was going to be a road comic here until I got on the radar in one of the bigger comedy business towns, like a London or wherever. And so I didn't mind that we lived in Lisbon, because I knew travel. Once you're in Europe, travel is really cheap.
Yeah, super easy and cheap, yeah.
The other day, I bought flights to Austria for €25.
Wow.
It's like $30 to fly from Portugal. And that's why it looks like I tour all over the world. Because once you're in Europe, you can hop in a train, and instead of LA to Vegas, you're going London to France.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different culture, a completely different language, completely different style of comedy even. But English-speaking comedy right now is in a really interesting place, because so many people have moved during COVID, because so many companies have allowed people to work from home. So now there's a lot of these great cities that people wanted to live in but couldn't live in because there weren't job opportunities there.
Yeah.
But now if you're able to live in a place like a Portugal or Berlin or Slovenia, Bulgaria, all these places now are getting huge populations of digital nomads and expats living there and making money from somewhere else and feeding the local economy. So we started doing English-speaking comedy shows and touring all over Europe, from Slovakia all the way to Norway, Iceland, Sweden, all over Spain, all the way down to like Morocco even.
Wow.
So it's been great. So it's funny because I don't think I'm necessarily traveling more than a road comic would in America. It just sounds like it because instead of visiting states, I'm visiting countries.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe this is presumptuous, but don't they need good comedy over there?
Yeah.
I mean, they're really hungry for it, because it's not that other people aren't funny, but there is a thing about the American slant because we created stand-up.
100%. Absolutely. But we also created basketball. And there was a time when America would play any other country in basketball and the score was like 180-9. It was embarrassing.
Yeah.
But now Eastern Europe is beating America in the Olympics.
Wow.
And I think that's what's happening now. I had a guy come up to me at a show one time and he said, "I like you more than Dave Chappelle." And I go, "Okay, now I don't believe you anymore." And he's all, "No, I'm being serious." And I go, "Why?" Well, Dave Chappelle is like one of the, a fantastic comic. Forget the politics aside, because I'm not a fan of the trans stuff, to be honest. But he said, "No, what you're doing is different than Chappelle." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "I've seen Chappelle in London twice. I paid a lot of money for it, and one time he was drunk." He's all, "And he came here and he just gave me an American story that was that he didn't change it for my European life." He said, "But when you're here, you're a high-level comedian from New York and London and LA." He said, "But you're giving me my life through the lens of a proper stand-up comic." And that makes me love your content even more than a Chappelle. And I was like, wow, that's powerful.
That's so interesting. No, it's totally true, because you have an assimilation with the different cultures much more than a Dave Chappelle from Ohio. He doesn't have, he just doesn't have that. He doesn't have 100%. That breadth, and honestly, I don't think he's that. I mean, I know he's I know the icon that he is, but like I watched the last special and I think I laughed like maybe 5 times and maybe 2 of those times out loud. Like I didn't even, like I'm just kind of like, he's just talking. He's just not, I don't even hear any punchlines. It's okay. It's a different beast. It's a different person. Yeah. But I definitely understand what that guy was telling you, because he's saying in a broader context that you're more interesting. That's all. Yeah. You have more sides to you.
Sure. It's hard to relate to someone who walks out on stage with a jumpsuit with his own name on it and a necklace with a logo of his name. He's not a regular person anymore.
Yeah.
This is it's not. It's just a different connection, a different experience, and he's not necessarily bringing joy anymore either. It's not about joy. He's almost more of an activist. Same thing, and I don't think it's necessarily good or bad, and I'm not claiming
it's
that
just what it is.
It is what it is. I'm not claiming.
And so if you're a person going out to see comedy, I think most of those people want to go out and just laugh.
Yeah, I agree.
Not have to think beyond the laughter that's happening. And that, good as somebody like a Chappelle show, it's not going to be just that.
Well, you know what it is? I don't think that people are opposed to thinking necessarily. Like I think they're okay with jokes being deep. But I think what Chappelle reminds me of is Maya Angelou's quote, where she said, "People don't always remember what you do or say, but they always remember how you made them feel."
God, and that's such a great quote. Yeah.
It is a great quote. And I think it's important that when to me, comedy is alchemy. It's taking something negative and turning it into something positive. That's what I did as an abused kid. That's what Albert Einstein literally said. Comedy is the weapon of the underdog. Or maybe it was Freud. Sorry. Comedy is a weapon of the underdog. That doesn't mean that that's all what comedy is, but I think that's the epicenter of where comedy comes from. I think it's the epicenter where all art comes from. It's that life gives us something hard, and we use joy so that we can tolerate it. And I don't think he was using joy in that last special.
No, me neither. But forget Dave Chappelle.
Sure.
But when we're just talking about comedians, it's so true, because comedians, the idea is that they're smarter because they're thinking just a little faster than everybody else. So they're able to call it out somebody else is thinking it, and then the comedian is actually vocalizing it.
Sure.
And, so I think a lot of people in the audience, they do feel those same things, but they don't have that talent to articulate it. So,
Sure.
We're the same people. That's the thing. That's where the
100%.
assimilation comes from. The assimilation comes from they are just like me, and I'm just like them.
Yeah.
I'm just happen to be calling them out, calling it out, calling out the joke.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And I don't, there's different styles of comedy. And I've always been a fan of not necessarily perceiving myself as higher up than the audience, because I think that's when I have trouble finding jokes that work, is when I'm at professorial or even philosophical. But I think like Hemingway used to say, it's a writer's job to notice what others only see.
Yeah, there you go.
It's my job. Like, I think comedy's like that. It's a blue collar art. Like, you have to sweat to get the answer. It's not just throwing, just going, everything I touch is art. It's not like that. You have to sweat. And I think it's my responsibility as a comedian to think about the things that regular people think about for longer, and to carry that burden in order to come up with something and help us be able to laugh at the things that hurt us. That's the alchemy. That to me is what comedy is about, is taking a bad thing and making it feel like a good thing so that we can tolerate it for longer.
Yeah. That's nice. You're just such a good person. I can really.
Thanks. I'm trying. I'm.
You're doing a great job. How's the kitty now? Okay.
Oh, he's really good. You can tell that he's been through an experience and he's almost apologetic. But I don't want to project like human emotions on it, because I don't want us to ever forget that he's an animal.
Yeah.
No matter what, and it's like, and when he gets scared,
yeah,
he loses control. And so
animals are unpredictable in general.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who cannot high five right now who said, that's a friendly tiger.
There was a guy just recently who stuck his hand in the tiger exhibit in Florida. What an idiot. And of course the tiger bites his arm off, and then they have to shoot the tiger. It's so sad. Terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Animals are, and people are animals too. Like my therapist used to say this thing in anger management that I really liked. He goes, that guy who rides an elephant? He's like, if you ever see a little man on top of an elephant, that little man is your rational brain. And that elephant is your animal instincts. And I'll tell you, every time people come into my office and they've made a big mistake, it's because they were thinking with their reptilian brain, their animal brain. It's not about, I'm a good person, let me rationalize my emotions. No, instead, it's that I'm an animal and I have to learn to control my impulses. And he told me that story after I told him, I know I'm trying to manage my temper, but what's wrong with yelling at idiots in traffic?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he goes, it's wrong because I want you to get in the habit, in the practice of controlling your impulses. Yeah. And because you are an animal, just as we all are. So I like that. I like to think.
Yeah, it's very smart. And we're going to wrap it up in a second, but let me ask you, because you've got this close relationship with your mom. Where does she live, by the way, now?
I moved her to Portugal with us. Oh. So she lives 20 minutes away by train, and she couldn't be happier. I was so nervous for a 73-year-old mom to move to a country at 73 and not speak Portuguese. And she's so brave. She's such a badass. Like,
amazing.
I feel like I grew up in like a UFC gym of women. Like every woman I grew up with was a fucking badass.
Yeah.
Like my grandmother, my mom, my aunt, and now my wife. Like she picked up that cat. Like she knew she was going to get bit. I was scared. I didn't know she was going to do it. And
how is she, by the way? How is her face, her nose?
Oh my God. I'll tell you something that I learned today. If you're a bald guy with tattoos and a big mustache, and you walk down the street holding your wife's hand who now has a black eye from a cat bite, people are going to look at you like you're the biggest piece of shit. It was, oh my God, you would not believe the number of dirty looks that I got. Yeah. Holding hands with a black-eyed woman. Yeah. It is worse. It's the worst.
When did you get all tatted up, by the way?
Oh, I started 1991 was the first tattoo I ever got. When like the only people that got tattoos were people just coming out of jail or people just going into jail.
Right.
Yeah, it was 91 when I got my first tattoo. Yeah.
And then have you consistently gotten them over the years, or are you done?
No, I get them. I get them when something big happens in my life. And now I'm married to a woman who loves tattoos. And so we only get them for special occasions. And my wife is part Romani gypsy, which is, they're even wilder than Arabs. And when we got married, her brother gave me a knife as a wedding present. And then my wife just looks at me and shakes her head and she goes, "That's not for food." And I'm like, "What?"
God.
Yeah, it's like a fighting knife.
Oh, God. Her brother got you one?
Yeah, and she's got these 3 dots tattooed on the inside of her hand. And she goes, "Hey, now that you're a part of our clan, you have to get those 3 dots. You can hide them when you close your thumb and index finger, but when you open them, you know you're in the clan." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I go, "Oh, I know this tattoo guy." She goes, No. We have to do it at my mom's house in the kitchen." And I'm like, "Holy shit."
With the knife.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. So I'm a wolf that married a wolf. Like,
did you do it yet?
Not yet, but I'm doing it when we go back to Sweden. Yeah.
Oh, my God. Now, how did they do it? With needles? With a hot needle?
Old school. Needles, pen.
And it's just right in between the finger and the thumb. And
the web? The webbing?
Yeah, the web. And
that's where you put the 3 dots.
3 dots.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Does her mom have those dots?
Yeah.
So what's the clan?
Well, they were Lundberg, but they came from gypsies, Romani gypsies, but her family is like Russian gypsies that lived in Sweden.
Who gets that? Gypsies?
Yeah, different gypsy clan. And here's the crazy part. Gypsies were actually from India and from all over, but originally when people saw them, they thought they were Egyptian, and that's why they called them gypsies.
Huh.
Because it was short for Egypt, so they called them gypsies.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
There's so many full circles in this. It's bizarre.
Well, I'm so glad your mom is over there. I was wondering because,
too.
You guys do the podcast. They try to bury us. You do that on video as well, which you can see on your YouTube channel. And so I see your mom. She's very pretty.
Oh, thanks.
And does she ever say, only because you bring up now and then that you were abused, okay? Mm-hmm. You bring that up now, right?
Yeah.
You bring that up whether it's in comedy or your album or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
So you're still feeling repercussions from what happened to you, as a child.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not so much that I necessarily carry the pain of being an abused kid. It's that I carry the responsibility of being a man who other people might listen to from time to time, or other people might say, "Hey, that's kind of a smart guy." Especially in comedy, I work with a lot of people that are much younger than me. Not like when I worked in any other field where as your career progressed, so did the age of the people you worked with. But in comedy, a lot of times you work with people that are much younger, especially I've been doing comedy 11 years. So a lot of people look at me as a big brother or an uncle. And I think the biggest mistake my dad made was not going to therapy.
Yeah.
It wasn't that he abused me. That wasn't the worst mistake. The worst mistake was that he didn't deal with the pain that he felt.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the mistake I made. And if I speak about it openly and without guilt and without regret, then maybe other guys who grew up in a macho way, like in a boxing gym, the way that I did, that they'll be like, "Hey, this isn't like a liberal guy who's got a weird beard and can't do a push-up and wears skinny jeans and top hats."
No, not at all.
This guy boxes. I mean, people joke around that I look like a Joe Rogan and all this other stuff. And I did. I grew up, boxing, martial arts, weightlifting, and I'm sleeved in tattoos. But I do want to know that there are people that look like me who believe in therapy and who think it is a good thing to be a man and tell another man that, "Hey, I love you. You're my friend. I love you and I care about you." Or if my friend who's a comedian who's been on the road for 3 weeks, I'm going to call him and say, "How are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you feeling lonely? Let's talk about it." Because I think I'm tired, just the same way I was tired of immigrants only being represented by the badly behaving ones. I'm tired of guys who are sleeved in tattoos only being represented by the ones who behave badly.
Yeah, that's very mature, and it's also very giving. It's very, you have a big heart.
Oh, thanks. Well, I used to be a piece of shit. I'll be honest. Like, that's the truth. I was not a good person.
Is that where the toxic masculinity, the name of that show, Reform Toxic Man? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Basically, a lot of people call their new hour, they call it a work in progress. I just thought that was boring. I'd rather talk about what the show's about, and instead of just saying work in progress, like it's just hodgepodge. The show is about that, and because that's the thing that I was most afraid to talk about publicly, which is the fact that I was a piece of shit, and I think we should give people a chance, give people a chance to update their software. And to be like, hey, I'm still an iPhone, and if I change my software, I can look just like a new one, and I can behave differently than an old one, even though there's another iPhone that might be a piece of shit and be sexist by accident. And there's a lot of things that I was sexist by accident. I was a homophobe by accident. I never thought of myself that way. I've always had gay friends, but even in front of them, I would say things unintentionally that would hurt them.
Yeah.
I was like an Edward Scissorhands almost.
Wow.
Until I learned to go to therapy and get real boy fingers.
Yeah. I hope you're able to make Reform Toxic Man into another album. I mean,
that's the goal. That's what I'm working on now.
It needs to be its standalone thing. Yeah, it's fascinating.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's the goal of calling it that, is that it's basically my new hour that I'm working on, and that's where I'm going with it.
Well, congratulations. I'm so happy to talk with you and meet with you.
Too.
An amazing story. Oh my gosh, cat attack. That is a treacherous situation, and I'm so glad your wife is okay.
She's great. She's asleep in bed and he's asleep right underneath her butt, his favorite place.
Oh, good.
So
that's
they're
good.
Great.
Nice. Yeah. They're all snuggled up. Everybody's snuggly.
Yeah, nobody's green anymore.
Yeah.
No more Hulk cat.
That's right. Oh, my gosh. All right, you guys can find more about Tamer over at his website, like I said, tamerkattan.com, and also follow him on all social media at Tamer Kattan. All right, you guys.
And Instagram is at Tamer Kat. If you sorry.
Okay. Is it Tamer Kat, K-A-T?
Exactly, yeah.
Tamer Kat with K-A-T. I love that.
Thanks.
All right, you guys. One more time on behalf of the very talented Tamer Kattan. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was really fun. And nice to finally meet you. I've always heard great things about the podcast and about you. So it's great to meet you.
That's so nice. Great. All right, you guys. My name's Christine Blackburn, saying, make it a story-worthy week.
Thanks for joining us on the Storyworthy Podcast. We'll be back next week with all new stories. Subscribe to Storyworthy on iTunes and visit the Storyworthy website at storyworthypodcast.com.
Membership fees apply after free trial. Cancel anytime.
Hi, it's Carl Deichler, CEO of Beachbody, and I'm giving away 10,000 free memberships a week to try our amazing Beachbody fitness and nutrition programs. Pick any program and just follow it step by step, like our 21-Day Fix program or the Ab Shredding Muscle Burns Fat program. Plus, there's free support in personalized fitness groups with our community of over 2 million members. Now is the time, so don't wait. Go to beachbody.com to claim your free membership and start feeling great.
Dad's Mr. Popular at the JCPenney Father's Day sale. From teas and tech to fragrance and fitness, find cool gifts for every kind of dad. Surprise him with an iTouch Active smartwatch, now $29.99. Score major savings with doorbusters, like St. John's Bay polos, just $7.99, and shorts, $16.99. Plus, shop extended store hours Friday and Saturday. Shopping is back. JCPenney. Offers valid on select styles through 6/19. Some exclusions apply. Doorbusters and smartwatch excluded from coupons. See store or jcp.com for details.